Hello, friends, and welcome to our in-depth study through the book of Ezra. Today, we're moving into chapter 5, where the temple rebuilding picks up again after a long pause, spurred by prophets and questioned by local officials. In this chapter, set about 15 years after the halt in chapter 4, the Jewish exiles in Jerusalem have let the temple work languish amid opposition and perhaps complacency. Then, prophets Haggai and Zechariah deliver God's messages, urging action. Leaders Zerubbabel and Joshua respond, and the people restart construction. This draws scrutiny from Tattenai, the Persian governor of the region, who investigates and sends a letter to King Darius, inquiring about the original decree from Cyrus. Rather than accusatory like before, this letter is factual, seeking verification. It's a turning point, showing how God uses his word to reignite commitment despite bureaucratic hurdles. The big idea for this lesson is God reignites purpose through prophets. This big idea captures how God sends messengers to awaken his people from stagnation, propelling them forward in his plans. In the broader book of Ezra, this connects the opposition in chapter 4 with the triumph in chapter 6, where the temple is completed. The book as a whole traces cycles of start, stop, and renewal, emphasizing that God's initiatives, whether through kings, people, or prophets, overcome inertia and resistance to achieve restoration. To support this, we'll explore three main events from the text. First, the prophet's call to resume building. Second, the leaders' and people's obedient response. And third, the governor's inquiry and the letter to Darius. Let's begin with the first event, the prophet's call to resume building. We'll read the relevant verses from Ezra chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, in the New International Version. Now Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the prophet, a descendant of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel who was over them. Then Zerubbabel son of Shealtiel and Joshua son of Jozadak set to work to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem, and the prophets of God were with them, supporting them. Now let's observe what's here. Haggai and Zechariah are named specifically. Haggai focused on prioritizing the temple over personal homes, as in his short book, while Zechariah offered visions of future glory. They're prophesying in the name of the God of Israel, meaning they speak with divine authority. This happens around 520 BC during Darius's second year. The prophets support the work ongoing, not just starting it. To explain and interpret this event, prophets in ancient Israel were God's spokespeople, often calling people back to obedience during crises. After years of delay, due to fear, economic pressures, or lost momentum, God uses these men to stir hearts again. Haggai's messages, dated precisely in his book, rebuke neglect and promise blessing for obedience. Zechariah, a descendant of Iddo, a priestly line, encourages with apocalyptic imagery. This isn't new revelation, but application of prior promises, like those in Isaiah about temple restoration. Historically, Darius's reign brought stability after Persian turmoil, creating a window for appeals. The prophet's role shows God's patience. He doesn't abandon but intervenes to redirect. Tying this back to the big idea, God reignites purpose through prophets. We see him using their words to spark action where human effort had faltered. For personal application, think about times when a timely word, from a friend, pastor, or scripture, jolts you out of routine. Like a coach's halftime speech rallying a tired team, it refocuses energy. In the empty places in your life, such as stalled goals or faded enthusiasm, be open to God's prophets today, perhaps through a podcast or conversation. This challenges how we behave. Act on those nudges promptly, trusting they come from Him. Let's turn now to the second event, the leaders and people's obedient response. Here are the key details from Ezra, chapter 5, verse 2 again, and implied in the context. Then Zerubbabel son of Shealtiel and Joshua son of Jozadak set to work to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem, and the prophets of God were with them, supporting them. Observing the text, Zerubbabel, civil leader, descendant of David, and Joshua, high priest, lead the charge, but it's collective. The prophets are with them, indicating ongoing encouragement. No mention of new decrees. They act on faith in Cyrus's old one and God's fresh word. Interpreting this, obedience here is immediate and corporate. After the emotional high of chapter 3 and the low of chapter 4, this resumption shows resilience. The temple's role was central, not just a building, but the symbol of God's presence and covenant. In Persian administrative terms, restarting without new permission risked charges of rebellion, yet they proceed. This echoes Haggai 1, where God questions why panels for houses but not his house. The support from prophets suggests teaching, perhaps resolving doubts. It highlights that true revival involves action, not just inspiration. Faith without works is dead, as James later says. Connecting this to the big idea, God reignites purpose through prophets, evident in how their messages mobilize leaders and people from passivity to progress. Picture a forest fire sparked by lightning. It starts small but spreads, renewing the ecosystem by clearing dead wood. Similarly, prophetic words ignite communal effort. For application, this applies to group settings like churches or families. When leaders respond, others follow. In the empty places in your life, like neglected relationships, let a stirring word lead to steps of reconciliation. This text challenges what we believe. God's calls aren't suggestions, but igniters for change. Let's examine the third event, the governor's inquiry and the letter to Darius. We'll read from Ezra chapter 5, verses 3 through 17. At that time Tattenai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shethar-bozenai and their associates went to them and asked, "Who authorized you to rebuild this temple and to finish it?" They also asked, "What are the names of those who are constructing this building?" But the eye of their God was watching over the elders of the Jews, and they were not stopped until a report could go to Darius and his written reply be received. This is a copy of the letter they sent him. To King Darius, greetings. The king should know that we went to the district of Judah, to the temple of the great God. The people are building it with large stones and placing the timbers in the walls. The work is being carried on with diligence and is making rapid progress under their direction. We questioned the elders and asked them, "Who authorized you to rebuild this temple and to finish it?" They replied, "We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, one that a great king of Israel built and finished. But because our ancestors angered the God of heaven, he gave them into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, the Chaldean, king of Babylon, who destroyed this temple and deported the people to Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild this house of God. He even removed from the temple of Babylon the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple in Babylon. Then King Cyrus gave them to a man named Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor, and he told him, "Take these articles and go and deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and rebuild the house of God on its site." So this Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundations of the house of God in Jerusalem. From that day to the present it has been under construction, but is not yet finished. Now if it pleases the king, let a search be made in the royal archives of Babylon, to see if King Cyrus did in fact issue a decree to rebuild this house of God in Jerusalem. Let the king send us his decision in this matter. Observing closely, Tattenai is the satrap, or governor, of Trans-Euphrates, the vast Persian province including Judah. He demands authorization and names, but the Jews aren't stopped immediately. God's eye protects them. The letter is neutral, reporting facts, the Jews' explanation, including exile as judgment, and requesting archive search. Sheshbazzar, mentioned earlier, was likely an early leader, perhaps Zerubbabel's uncle or alias. Interpreting this, the inquiry could have been hostile, like chapter 4, but it's investigative, allowing work to continue. The Jews' response is bold. They claim servitude to the God of heaven and earth, a title acknowledging his universality, fitting Persian ears. They honestly recount history, sin, judgment, mercy, showing humility. Archives were clay tablets in treasuries at Babylon or Ecbatana. This event sets up chapter 6's positive reply, demonstrating God's orchestration. Opposition leads to confirmation. In nature, it's like a river hitting rocks but carving a path forward, gaining strength. This ties to the big idea: God reignites purpose through prophets, here sustaining the momentum against scrutiny, turning potential setback into validation. For personal application, when questioned about your faith or choices, respond with truth and confidence. This challenges how we think. See inquiries as opportunities, not threats. In the empty places in your life, like uncertainties and decisions, Trust God's watchful eye. In conclusion, let's restate the big idea. God reignites purpose through prophets. We've covered the three main events: the prophet's call to resume building, the leaders' and people's obedient response, and the governor's inquiry and the letter to Darius. These show how divine intervention overcomes delays. Reiterating personal application, this text challenges how we think, believe, and behave. It shifts thinking to view pauses as preparation, strengthens belief in God's timely words, and calls us to behave with bold obedience. In the empty places in your life, whether dormant talents or unresolved issues, allow Him to reignite through His messengers. May He plant deeply in your barren places, yielding abundance you can't yet imagine. Now take a look at the show notes for questions to reflect on. You can use them in your small group or just take a few moments to reflect on your own. If you like this study, please like and subscribe for more just like it. Until next time, grace and peace.